Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. The app is simple. Pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Download the Prize Picks Daily Fantasy Sports app today and use code FIELD and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code FIELD on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
Today on CityCast Houston, I know a lot of people enjoyed our snow day yesterday, staying at home and maybe building snowmen after that historic snowstorm. But just how historic was it? And when will the city open back up? Because things are still icy. Houston Chronicle's weather reporter Ryan Nickerson is joining me to answer those questions and more. It's Wednesday, January 22nd. I'm Raheel Ramzanali, and here's what Houston's talking about. Ryan, what's up? Good morning. Welcome into CityCast Houston. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Enjoyed the snow yesterday and just enjoying the cold weather, man. It's been nice.
I know. What a wild, wild day. It was so much fun. Did you get a chance to make a snow angel or a snowman yesterday?
I didn't, but I did take my dog out into the snow. And I was hoping that she would be like all jumping for joy in the snow, but she was kind of just nonplussed. You know?
Yeah. It's one of two things, right? They're either going to love it, dogs, or they go out and they're like, this is not for me. I'm a spoiled Houston dog. It's too cold. My paws are not conditioned for this. We did the same thing with our dog. He loved it. He just ran off, enjoyed the closed streets. There was no cars, so he was running in the wild. My kids were having a blast. It was just a fun energy yesterday, and it was so much fun to see everyone having a good time. I don't know if you saw, but at the Miller Outdoor Theater, the hill there, people were snowboarding down, skiing down. They were just wild, and it was so cool.
And I want to know, like, what were they like skiing with? Like, because who has a sled in Houston? You know,
yeah.
I guess people were using their leftover Amazon boxes or something.
Yeah, we did laundry baskets, and that was it didn't work that well, right? Because we don't have hills out in Richmond, but we tried, so it was pretty cool. How much snow did we get yesterday, by the way?
The National Weather Service at Liberty County, they measured 2 inches of snow in their office, but reports have been, like very wide. There's been reports of 1 inch to 4 inches, just depending on where in Houston you are.
It was really cool to see. We saw the models saying that some areas could get 6 inches with some thunderstorms, right, quote unquote, but there were snowstorms. But when we actually woke up and we saw the images, when we walked outside, it looked like, in Richmond at least, it looked like a good 4 to 5 inches. And I know some areas definitely had it more. The models predicted this, and it was pretty spot on.
Yeah, we saw it coming from a good week away, and it didn't disappoint. But like I said, not everywhere got 4 inches, but still it was enough to, be a significant weather event, something that we haven't seen since like the 70s or 80s. I forget which year, but it was record breaking.
Yeah, it was pretty historic. I posted this on Instagram and a lot of people responded to this. I was like, I'm tired of living through historic weather events here in the city of Houston. It seems like we have one every 6 months, right? Like, I know I'm exaggerating, but it seems like that. But this was pretty historic.
It was. And I am so happy that we lived through a historic weather event where it wasn't widespread catastrophe either.
Yeah. And I think that's what really helped people stay so happy. They were enjoying it because there weren't widespread power outages. Now, we did see some, right? Like, I know some neighborhoods caught it, but for the most part, as a city, we did okay. So shout out to ERCOT, shout out to Centerpoint for preparing and getting everybody ready for this. And, things looked okay, but the temperatures are in the teens, or they were earlier this morning, and it's going to be frigid today. So please be careful. Like, I know we were all relaxed yesterday having fun, but truly, in my opinion, and I think you're going to echo the same sentiment, the danger starts now because of these icy roads.
Yeah, absolutely. All that snow that we enjoyed yesterday melted. And then when temperature dropped last night, it refroze in the roads. And there's been, black ice on the road, and so you can't really see it either. So it presents a really real danger. So that's why the city and county have been telling people to still stay home. Don't get back on the roads, and just hunker down until everything is melted away, because it's not going to be below freezing temperatures for that long. We should be back in the 60s by the end of the week.
So when do you think the city opens back up and we return to a normal day in the city of Houston? Because the temps are still cold, ice is still out there. What's the forecast looking like? When are we back to normal?
Yeah, if not later today, then Thursday or Friday, we should get back to normal. It's not going to be, snowing like it was on Tuesday, but you're still going to have pretty wet conditions, but it's not going to be below freezing for that long. So as soon as it gets, warm enough for the snow to melt, we should be back to normal.
That's awesome. So everyone, make sure you're following local directions, right, from your city officials, from the police department. Everyone's putting out a lot of information. So please, please, please heed those warnings, because I can't tell you enough how scary it is driving in ice. All right. And we're not used to it. I actually saw this late yesterday, where in my neighborhood, somebody was driving like under 10 miles per hour. But because the snow already started melting and things started to ice back up, the car was sliding everywhere, right? Like, you got to be careful. So please, please follow directions.
Absolutely. And, we see that like the city is prepared for these types of things to happen. But it's still a situation where you don't even want have to dial any sort of 511, 311, 911. You don't want to dial any 3-digit number to get them to come get you.
Now, Ryan, I do want to give some credit to Houstonians for following directions that were given for Tuesday, right when that snow initially hit. I didn't see many cars on the road from the morning hours, but unfortunately, as of this recording, one person did die on the roadways, and we're definitely thinking about them and their family. But as a region, we did surprisingly okay during this snowstorm.
We did. There have been a couple of accidents, one fatal, but, things have been pretty good, relatively to how we fared in significant weather. And also another thing that I was surprised at, was the amount of carbon monoxide calls. I put out a call early Tuesday to the fire department, and they said it's been pretty uneventful compared to when there were severe weather in the past that, knocked out power or had cold spells. They've had, dozens of people having carbon monoxide alerts. And, some people even had to go to the hospital before it. But this one was pretty quiet.
That's awesome to hear, because the safer we are, the better it is, and we can get through this. So that is really, really awesome to hear. I saw you wrote a story about our neighbors in Beaumont and Louisiana. They were issued the first ever blizzard warning. That is nuts to say. Like, what was going on over there?
Well, first, shout out to my girlfriend. She lives in Beaumont. She's covering the storm in Beaumont as we speak. And right now, she doesn't seem that worried, but it is historic because the Lake Charles National Weather Service Center has never, ever put out a blizzard warning before. And just think about that, Beaumont, Lake Charles, Lafayette, Louisiana experiencing a blizzard. That's so far out of our experience. But it happened.
Now, could Houston ever see a blizzard warning? Like, were we close to that during this snowstorm? Because it was windy. It was coming down and visibility was almost zero at the peak around 6 a.m.
So, maybe. Anything could happen, obviously. But blizzards, they tend to be on the north east side of storms. Okay. So if there was a blizzard to hit Houston, it would have to hit really south in the Gulf of Mexico in order it to hit us.
Life and Death on the Border 1910 to 1920 is now on view at Holocaust Museum Houston from January 24th to May 25th. This groundbreaking exhibition is produced by the Bullock Texas State History Museum in collaboration with Refusing to Forget, and it explores a decade of hardship, conflict, and state-sanctioned violence along the Texas border that threatened to destroy a community. But this decade also led to a cultural renaissance along the border and beyond, and it inspired the Mexican-American civil rights movement. Life and Death on the Border 1910 to 1920 will be on view in Holocaust Museum Houston's Joseph and Edith Mintzberg Gallery, January 24th through May 25th. Admission is always free for ages 18 and under and college students with a valid school ID, and it's also free to everyone Thursdays from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Learn more at hmh.org/lifeanddeath. Look, there's no place like Texas, except when it comes to skiing or my personal favorite, snowboarding. And I get it, you're heading to snowier pastures, but before you leave Texas, grab one last taste of the real Texas in Amarillo. If you love a good Texas road trip like me, then Amarillo needs to be on the top of your list because it's quirky, wild, western, and a spontaneous city. I mean, where else can you spray paint a Cadillac, cruise down Route 66, and even find that perfect cowboy or cowgirl hat for rodeo season? Here's a pro tip for me. If you're driving to a ski destination, make sure you stop at Palo Duro Canyon right outside of Amarillo and hike in the second largest canyon in the U.S. Heck, I think you should stop on the way back as well because of how amazing it is. After that hike, be sure to carb load on some Tex-Mex and then pop into a speakeasy in Amarillo and grab a well-deserved drink. The mountains may be calling, but Amarillo will make you proud to call Texas home. Start planning your trip to Amarillo at visitamarillo.com and après ski into the real Texas.
Do you plan your vacations based on whether you can speak the local language? With Babbel, language no longer has to be the barrier. I'm David Plotz, the CEO of CityCast, and I went to Mexico City a couple of years ago with my girlfriend, who's a native Spanish speaker, so I just let her do all the talking, like all of it. I adored the city, and now I'm going to go back in a couple of months, but with my college roommates, who are a bunch of middle-aged men, none of us Spanish speakers. When I was younger, I might not have been bold enough to do that, but now I'm not anxious because Babbel has me covered. Thanks to Babbel, I know how to order a taxi, how to give directions, how to order in a restaurant, all the small and useful bits of language that make international travel easier. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons, handcrafted by over 200 language experts, get you to begin speaking your new language in 3 weeks or whatever pace you choose. And because conversing is the key to really understanding each other in a new language, Babbel is designed using practical, real-world conversations, especially the sort you need while traveling. Food, how to get places. Babbel's tips and tools are inspired by the real-life stuff you actually need when communicating. With a focus on conversation, you'll be ready to talk wherever you go. So I hope I'll see you in Mexico in a couple of months. Or, as we say, espero verte en Mexico en un par de meses. So let's get more of you talking in a new language. Babbel is gifting CityCast listeners 60% off subscriptions at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Babbel.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Ryan, it seems like snow and huge cold fronts are becoming more and more common in recent years, right? We are already prone to extreme things like heat and hurricanes, but are snow days becoming the next crazy weather event that we should prep for annually?
We should definitely keep prepping for snow events, but it's not going to happen every year. I don't know if it's escalating, but it's still going to be rare. However, as the population continues to boom and we continue to spread out, there is still like a greater chance of bad things happening when it does snowfall. So, yes, be prepared, not for it to happen every single year, but for when it does happen, we want to make sure that, if the power goes out, we're prepared for that. We're prepared to have, shelter in place for an extended period of time.
I remember during Hurricane Harvey, we experienced a life-changing event, right? Like people look at things differently during hurricane season. And then, of course, later that year, guess what happened? We had a snowfall.
Mhm.
And it seems like there is this connection of hurricanes leading to snowfalls. Are there any connections, or is that just a happenstance?
That's just a happenstance. It's all about just the pressure systems that are happening in the atmosphere. Most people forget that we had snowfall in 2017 because of Hurricane Harvey. I don't think it correlates, but I'm not a meteorologist.
Yeah.
Is it inconvenient though? Yes, because as soon as we exit hurricane season, November 20th, we have to worry about cold weather, and it sucks.
Yeah, it does. I know a lot of homeowners and people that live in the city of Houston freak out over cold weather after Winter Storm Uri. I've mentioned this on the podcast. Like that was one of those moments for me. I grew up in Houston, right? But now anytime I see any kind of weather around 32 degrees, I'm like, okay, time to prep everything.
Yeah,
I'm taking those extra precautions because you never know what can happen with the power grid. You never know what happens with just how strong the storm could be. So, it is something that I am proud of the city. Like we did a good job prepping for this one and we took all of the warnings very serious.
I just want to say that Winter Storm Uri isn't a thing.
What do you mean?
Well, it's not officially named Uri. The Uri was given the name to the storm by the Weather Channel,
Okay.
not the National Weather Service. So when you see stuff about Winter Storm Enzo, that's a name given to it by the Weather Channel.
Yeah, I actually saw that on X the other day that the winter storm names are not official names, right? Hurricane names are official names. These are just like media creations almost, but we got to mark it with something. So I get it. I get what you're saying, but at the same time, like I can't just be like, hey, remember that 2021 storm?
That's true. That's true. It's definitely convenient.
Ryan, the city did a really good job preparing for this, in my opinion. What did they do so well this time where, things for the most part yesterday looked okay?
Well, a lot of people were able to enter shelters.
Mm-hmm.
More than 1,000 people went to Houston's warming centers. That was a big deal. There's been a lot of back and forth between, the previous administration and this current administration on, who's to blame for why warming centers weren't open before. I don't know, but now it seems like, they got to figure it out. And they were able to get a lot of not only people warm and give them blankets, but also food. And they were also able to take care of a lot of people's pets as well.
Yeah, that's awesome that, that they had that taken care of, because that was immediately, I know when we were talking about it last Friday, we're like, what's going to happen with such a vulnerable community, right? And I'm glad the shelters worked out and everything was good. We fast forward now and maybe a year from now, 3 years from now, do we think about this storm as like a historic? We go, oh yeah, do you remember that storm in 2025? Or does it just become like a part of our life and we just go, oh yeah, it snowed in 2025? Because Winter Storm Uri, media created name, I know, that one is always going to mark a pretty important part in a lot of people's lives because of how tragic it was. This one, as of now, as we're recording, it was just a cool snowstorm. Things were okay. You did mention that one person did lose their life. So we think about them. But for the most part, the city did okay in this. How historic is this going to be?
It's not going to be remembered the same way as 2021 because it's not going to last as long. And it's not a statewide freeze. However, I do think it will be remembered just because Houston needed a break. It was a tough hurricane season, a tough summer. And honestly, we haven't had really significant cold weather all of 2024. Mm-hmm. For the most part, our winter has been tame. People will remember this snowfall in 2025 as being just, a Houston snow day. And I think that's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. Ryan, here's to no more historic events, right? Like we can just have normal summers, normal winters. It might make your coverage a little boring, but you know what? That might be okay. No more historic events, please.
We will have historic events this year. That's almost a guarantee. Yes,
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So hopefully you'll have me back to talk about those again.
I was going to say, when that happens, we'd love to have you back on. And everyone out there, stay safe. Please, please heed the warnings of local officials when you're out on the roads, because, again, things are going to be icy today. So please take caution. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
That was Ryan Nickerson. You can read his work in the Houston Chronicle. Before we go, do me a favor and rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening right now. And share this episode with your favorite group chat. I know you have a bunch of group chats to pick from, so pick the best one and hit that share button and say, hey, check out CityCast Houston. This is a great local podcast that I think you'll like as well. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter, Hey Houston, for even more news, events, happenings, and daily moments of joy. I've dropped that link in our show notes. Thanks. That will do it for today. I'm Raheel Ramzanali. I hope you're staying warm. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something new. I'm going to hold it 1 second because I think the kids are playing outside and they rung the doorbell. So my dog is freaking out. Give me 1 second. He's going to stop. Yeah, he's freaking. Give me 1 second.